Today I'm going to talk to you a bit about sleep and what we are doing at Dreem. And after that, a bit more in detail about my role in the company, which is CTO. So very quick introduction about sleep, so we can give a brief overview. Sleep is a really vast issue that is highly underestimated. Today, about a third of the global population is suffering from sleep troubles. About 10% are defined as chronic insomniac, and only 15% of the population are diagnosed with sleep apnea. So meaning that 80 to 90% remain undiagnosed, and it's about 7% of the population. So we all know the consequences of a poor night of sleep, but obviously the long-term consequences are much more higher. And poor sleep is correlated with terrible disease like Alzheimer's, cancer, Parkinson, etc. And the cost of bad sleep has been estimated to roughly $400 billion per year in the US, which is higher than the total amount of tax that is raised in France in 1 year. And this cost is mostly due to the link between bad sleep and this disease. So I'm going to tell you about our story. We think that we can solve most of the sleep issue in the world. And this story started as most of the story of companies by actually the story of its founders. So this is Hugo, my co-founders. We met with a team of neuroscientists that worked on deep sleep stimulation. So this team was taking some work of another team, and they have shown that it was possible by playing some sounds synchronized with the brain activity to increase the duration of deep sleep. So deep sleep is a particular stage of sleep where you will recover the most. And we thought that this result was very interesting, and we thought that it was possible to take this result from the lab to make it in a product to give it to everybody. And so this story of the company really started with a discovery from neuroscience that we wanted to take from the lab and to make it available to solve the largest issues. But when we meet this team of neuroscientists, we were in third year at Polytechnic again, and so we were like very young and kind of inexperienced. So we first started to meet different people because we had some, and both of us had the same background, so we had some technical skill, but it was being able to take this result from the lab and put it outside required some work at the same time in computer science, in materials, in electronics, embedded system design, mechanical engineering. And so we had some of these skills, but not all of them. So we tried to make some prototypes, but obviously we wasn't able to make it a real functional prototype. So we started to meet different mentors, either engineers, scientists, or entrepreneurs, to be able to have some credibility. The next thing that we did was to participate to contest, so we could earn some money at the beginning. And so we raised a bit more than 200K with awards, still being in third year at school. And about 4 months after meeting this team, we raised our first millions with Laurent Alexandre, who is the founder of Doctissimo, and who was our first angel investor. By this time, we were at the end of the third year with a bit more than 1 million raised. And our fourth year was going to be outside in the US, in Berkeley. And so we hired a team of about 10 people based in Paris while we were still studying in the US. So that's the beginning. A bit more quickly, this team worked quite well, and we were able to make our first functional prototypes. That was not the most beautiful one, but this one kind of important for us because it was the proof that we were able to assemble the technology in one prototype. Well, of course, there is still lots of work to do, and in June 2016, we released the first beta version of our device. That was doing what scientific research was doing, so it was still deep sleep stimulation, and we were able to increase the duration of deep sleep with this device. So after that, in the same way we did with the result of deep sleep stimulation, we wanted to take all the work that has been done in sleep medicine and sleep neuroscience and to embed it on our device to be able to solve larger sleep issues. And so by the end of 2017, we released the actual version of the device, which is there also. And to tell you a bit what this device is doing, so we are able to measure the brain activity with these sensors, electrodes, on the front and on the back. We can play sound synchronized with the brain activity to induce deep sleep with a bone connection speaker there. And we have also developed some features to help people fall asleep faster, also features to help diagnose sleep diseases. And we reproduce the advice that a sleep doctor would give to an insomniac to be able to treat his insomnia. So where are we now? So the company was founded in 2014. So today it's a bit more than 4 years for the company. Today we are a team of 80 people. We raised a bit more than $60 million for what we did, but our efforts are still mainly in engineering. Most of the team, about 50 people in the team, are still engineers, with people working on all the aspects of the device. Well, this device can look quite simple, but it actually requires lots of different work. Some people working on neuroscience, on the materials, on the electronics, on the algorithm, etc., etc. So even if we have a device that is available on the market, most of our effort is still some R&D effort. And we've got a bit more than 10 scientific publications. So we are quite well on the road to be able to succeed in our challenge that was to become one of the world leader in sleep. Today we are probably the biggest company working on one device on sleep. You've got some huge company like Philips, for example, or Johnson & Johnson, but really for the young company and the one we can call a startup, we are today the biggest startup working on sleep. And so the road is still long, but we've made some huge progress in the beginning. And I will go back a bit on this story, but from my point of view, this time from the role of CTO, which actually I wasn't at the beginning. My first title was Chief Science Officer. So I'm just CTO for a bit more than 1 year. And as I told you, the company is a bit more than 4 years old. And the mission that I had in the first 4 years was really different. And it really changed a lot in the first 4 years. So I will talk a bit about 4 different steps that are roughly 1 year per step, and with some missions of CTO that was very different from the year 1 to the year 4. So my first year as a CTO was a bit everything but CTO, meaning that my work was not really a technical work, because as I told you, we hired a team in Paris, and at this time we were still studying in Berkeley. So we had a team of about 10 people developing the device in Paris, and Hugo and I was still working in Berkeley in an entrepreneurship program. So the first year I did was really about trying to define the business model, trying to find partners, trying to raise funds, win awards, etc., etc. Well, so this picture is one award that we won. That was a Grand Prix d'Innovation of Paris. And well, that represents the fact that I was not doing some R&D and I was preparing this award and I was pitching for this awards. And yeah, for 1 year really, I didn't did much of a technical work. The reason why I didn't do it at first was, I think, mainly also because I didn't dare to do it. Meaning that so now I'm 27, I was 22 or 23 back then, still a student, and we hired like 10 people who were much more skilled than I was in all the field. Bless you. Some people was PhD with a bit more than 10 years of experience in their field, and I didn't dare at this time to go and see them and tell them, you need to do your algorithm like that. Well, that was not my job to tell them you need to do your algorithm like that. But my job should have been to talk to all the different people with who has different skill and to be the link between them. But really, I didn't do it at this time, and it's mainly, I think, because I thought I wouldn't be able to lead these people in a technical way. I felt myself well, good for business or for strategy, but not for for the technical stuff. So really, my first year was not really a year of CTO, and actually my title again was Chief Science Officer. So for the second year, I worked a lot on all the exploratory project, but also all the project where nobody was working on. And the thing I worked at the beginning, and actually one of the best thing I did in the company, was the work on dry EEG electrodes. So EEG is for electroencephalogram. This is the brain electrical activity that we measure with sensors. I don't know if you've seen well, you know, if when you measure your heart rate, you're going to have some sticky patch that you put there. Well, this is ECG electrodes. That's the same thing for EEG. It's some sticky glue that you will put in your hair, and a technician is going to put it. That takes about half an hour. And one of the big challenges that we had was to be able to measure the brain activity without this glue. So it's developing dry EEG sensors, meaning so the headband is put like that. And so when we put it, we are instantly able to measure the brain activity. If I remove it, I don't measure it, of course. But so this is kind of a technical, huge achievement that we did. And at first, when we hired this team of 10 people, we didn't expect to hire somebody to work specifically on this electrode. So there was like a void or a hole in the technical team with nobody working on these particular topics. And that was topics that I knew a bit. That was topics that mixed chemistry, signal analysis, physics, and materials. And I'm not an expert in any field, really, but I'm kind of good on the different pluridisciplinary fields. And so I decided that, well, this work would be mine. So my work for the second year was really to develop these dry EEG sensors. So I met with tons of experts, I met with tons of labs. We tried different materials, and well, this is two things. This is some carbon nanotube there, and this is some specific shape for the material that can give an adhesive effect. It's called Gecko effect. And that was really my second year of CTO, was working on different projects, but mainly this one. And this was also for me a way to gain my legitimacy, my technical legitimacy in the company. Well, this was one tough technical challenge. Nobody could do it. I had some time. And today, the data that we gather, so today we've got some people that are specifically dedicated to this topic, but that reported to me directly at first. And so today, one of the best things that we succeed to have is to be able to measure very accurately the activity of the brain and to analyze it also accurately. So this took me about 1 year, and as this is something at the core of the technology, because gathering the signal is very linked to the design of the headband, to the mechanics, but also to the signal analysis and to the algorithm. And so doing that, I spent lots of time to talk with all the technical teams and try to take my role as not necessarily technical lead, meaning that I will not lead each person in the specific field, but much more able to make the link between everybody. So my third year was actually my real title, that was back then Chief Science Officer, was to work on the long-term scientific and technical strategy and development of the company. So I kept the development of the dry AG sensors, but I also worked on the design of clinical study. I worked on the regulatory pathway to be able to be a medical device. I worked on all the project that was either not taken by somebody, for example, the features to make people fall asleep. Yeah, by the way, this is our first scientific publication that was published like 2 years ago. And that was really my job, was to be able to work on all the long-term development and long-term scientific strategy of the company. But at some point, so we had another person that was actually CTO, so developing mostly the short-term development. And there had some conflict at some point between me defining the long-term development and him defining the short-term development. And so we decided to, so Jérôme worked on a different topic, on explorating the opportunities with pharmaceutical companies. And so for 1 year, I took the whole research and development of the company. And so for 1 year, I'm now Chief Technical Officer. And my job is actually changing. So I should have put a step in between this one. At first, when I became CTO, I had in direct report all the software teams. And we didn't have any VP software as today. So most of my work was still very linked to all the technical people in the company. And well, let's say 6 months later, we had a bit more of structuration in the team. And today, my work is really to rely on these 4 people in the company. And that's my only 4 direct report. So Olivier is leading the software, a team of about 30 people. Pierrick is leading the research. Pierre is leading the hardware, which is developing the headband. And Alessandro is leading the regulatory strategy. And so my work really changed also a lot from the beginning of, well, let's say 1 year ago to now. Because now this team of 4 people is quite well structured, and my work is ready to make the link between all of them and to define the long-term strategy of the company. But I miss a bit the time when I had the hand a bit more in the dirt, because I really don't develop much myself today or explore technical topics myself today. My work is a bit more about management, planning, and strategy. So you have to understand that if you aspire to be a CTO, your work will, and no matter the company you work on, your job will dramatically change from day 1 to day whatever, and you need to be prepared to be able to change the way you work with things that you will like that will happen, but you will also lose things that you like to do. And so it's important to be able to shift in the way you work, because I think that's also part of what can make a good CTO or any executive in a company. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'll be pleased to answer any kind of question, either technical or on management or on whatever. Thank you.
the question is like, why did you have to go to Berkeley to do an entrepreneurship program? You don't think what you have already in France is enough?
Well, the program I did was, so it's a 2-year program that is actually one of the best programs I've seen. It is the entrepreneurship program of Polytechnic, which is in 2 years. The first year is in Polytechnic, second year is in Berkeley. And it's for technical innovation. So the idea is that half of your, I'm not answering question, I will do it. Half of the courses are technical courses and the second half are business courses. And so what you do in this program is, during the first year, the idea is to have an idea of a startup. And so you're going to meet with lots of scientists, lots of people who might have some results that could could result in a company. And the second half of the program is to start this idea into a real company. In our case, we went a bit faster, and so by the end of the first year, the company was already launched and we already has raised funds. And we had lots of hesitation to know, should we drop out? Should we ask the school to stay in Paris and so have a program that was special for us, or should we go there? And so we decided to went there. And I think it was a good thing, because the thing that you are going to see abroad, and I think it would have been interesting either in the US or in Japan or in China or whatever, but it really gives, it's not the courses that you've got. The courses were not much better than the courses were in Paris. They were a bit worse, I think. But all the little things that that we saw in the US help us to be able to understand how we should talk to people there, how we should position our offer, and well, that's why also we opened an office in San Francisco, like at the very beginning of the company. In the few months, we opened the office while we stay in Berkeley. So a few months after the creation of the company, we opened an office in San Francisco. So it has lots of downside, the cost, the distance, etc. But we, doing that, were able to have a company that had one leg in the US and one leg in Paris and understanding the US market. And our lead investor on the last round of financing was Johnson & Johnson, who is the biggest health company in the world, and that's a US company. And so it really helped us to, I think if we didn't go there, I think it would have been harder to be able to, but it's not the courses, it's really going there. You can just live there for 6 months or have an internship there for 6 months. It's not the courses or the program. It's really living there and understanding how it's different. And one of the reasons why we are not selling in Asia today, either in China or Japan, is because we don't know the culture there. And even if we hire people who know the culture, we, as founders, don't know at all the culture. So we are not eager to go there. It's not a good or bad decision, but it's like that. And we are not going to sell in Asia, and we sell in the US, and since day 1 or day 100, we have an office in the US. So that's why we decided to go there. And, well, I don't know what would have been the story if we had stayed in Paris, but from what I can see, it was a good decision.
Hi, thanks a lot for the talk. It was very interesting. I have a question. Do you consider the Dreem product as a healthcare product, therapeutic, or wellness? And if so, depending on your answer, how does it define and influence your R&D strategy?
Yes, so that's a good question. Well, last one was good also, of course. So we, since the beginning, are a bit in a gray zone between the consumer mass market world and the healthcare medical world. And so we decided at first to sell the device to the mass market because we wanted to go as fast as possible reaching this market and being able to have feedback, to get data, to get lots of things that would help us iterate a lot. So doing that, we are not commercializing a medical device as of today. And it allows us to be more agile, but the downside is we cannot have some medical claim. So I cannot tell that I make some diagnosis. I can tell you that I work on diagnosis and I work on a lot of stuff. I work on therapy of insomnia, but my device is not treating insomnia, but I'm working on it. And the downside is that. The downside is also the credibility that you can have in the field. But in our case, that's why we wanted to publish a lot of what we are doing to have this credibility. Yet, not being a medical device allow you to have some commercialization in the healthcare world. For example, our device is used by pharmaceutical companies in their clinical trials because they trust us with the publication that we have, with the data that they can see. They trust us with the quality of the data and our ability to be used in this healthcare world. Our long-term goal, however, is to be a medical device, which might be, which might happen quite soon, and is to be able to have some claims and some actions in the therapeutic world. So our goal is to treat insomnia, is to treat depression, is to diagnose lots of pathologies, sleep pathologies, but also pathologies that are linked to sleep, like schizophrenia, depression, Alzheimer. And so we are, as of today, moving from the consumer world to the medical world. So it takes some time. At the same time, it's our culture, because the culture of a company, of a tech consumer company, is very different from the culture of even a digital therapeutic company. The culture is different, so there is a shift. We are actually setting a quality management system which is required to develop a medical device. This is a bit a shock of culture between what we've done and what we are willing to do. But this exercise is very interesting and benefic for the company because it gives us also the rigor. At first, we needed to go as fast as possible in every direction. Today, even for the quality of our development, we need to, if we want to have something that is very efficient for people with sleep disorder or sleep disease, we need to be very rigorous in our development. And so this step that we are taking from the consumer to the medical world, we are doing everything for it not to be a burden, but to be an opportunity. And for now, that's working pretty well. So yes, we're in the gray zone between medical and consumer. We were more consumer, we're becoming more medical, but this will take still a bit of time. But that does not mean that even if we are going to be a medical device, we will continue to sell consumer device to the mass market. You can sell a medical device to the mass market also. So the frontiers are a bit blurred.
Hello, thank you for your speech. As a software engineer with some ideas and of hardware products, would you recommend for me and my partners to try to make some MVPs ourselves with some stuff like Raspberry Pi, Arduino, and etc. Or from the start, trying to catch the experts in electronics or etc.
Well, my advice would be so it's for actually every hiring. I think it's important that you face the challenges before having the expert, because if you are going to hire somebody without knowledge of the difficulties, well, you first have to see your limitations or the limitations of your team before you are going to hire somebody new. And that's true for any cases, either for the very beginning, but also for a company that is our side, and I think it's also true for a company that is much bigger. And so I would say that, yeah, sure, you need to go and test. We tested, we failed because it was not our skill, and we were lucky enough to have some good financing that allowed us to hire people that was skilled. But at first, we wanted to make some prototypes that wasn't sufficient, wasn't good enough. But I think it's very important to first do it, because you cannot otherwise know all the difficulties and the challenges that a good person will face, and otherwise you risk to have somebody that is not as good as you would like. So yeah, sure, well, if it's not your field of expertise, you would need to have somebody to make this work, because you want to have a team that is made of very talented people and experts on each field. So if you're an excellent software developer, the chance that you can also be an excellent hardware engineer are pretty low. It might, but it might also be pretty low. So my recommendation would be to test, to fail, to raise funds or to have some awards or grants or whatever, and to hire or team up with somebody that has this skill. But yeah, definitely the things we did at the beginning of the company was to hire 10 people, and each of these guys with a specific technical skill. And that's really the core value of the company. First, these people was really good in technical and human skills. But the core value was also that these people work together. And the fact of having in the same place the guy developing the electronics next to the guy developing the sensors, next to the guy who's going to analyze the signal coming from the electronics and the sensors, next to the one who is doing the design of the headband, etc., allowed us, I think, to reach some technical achievements that wouldn't have been possible if we have outsourced. So yeah, my first advice would be do not outsource. Then it will be try and fail, and then raise some fund and find the best guy, because it might be you, but it might also be someone else.
Thank you.
Hello. So in France, a lot of labs struggle to transfer their technologies to enterprises. So I wanted to know if you did all the research with only your team, or if you had an agreement with the labs to transfer their technology.
So our case is a bit special, because the very first early results that we had about deep sleep stimulation had been published by a team in Germany and without patent. And so this result has been taken by a team in France, and we worked with this team in France who told us, look, there is this result, it's interesting. So in our case, we didn't have a proper transfer agreement between the lab we worked, neither the lab who made the first discovery, and our company. And so there are also different companies doing the same thing. After that, we had, so for example, we had 3 PhD students that, so no, the 3 of them are graduated, no, 2 of them are graduated, one is still in PhD, who were employee of the company and doing a PhD in a partner lab. So we were paying for the student, we were paying the lab, but in exchange, the results that was produced by the student in the lab, we could use it. After, it depends on the agreement that you have, but in our case, all of this agreement was we prefer to pay a bit more and have the technology than have a licensing fees for the technology. We work with a bit more than 30 labs in Europe and in the US. And the thing is also, by working with a lot of labs, you do not rely completely on one single lab. And so it's easier to have some agreement when you can pay them or have some common interest with them, and have a contract where you still have the technology. But yes, well, if at the beginning we didn't have this chance to have a result that was published and not patented, well, we should have been for sure through a tech transfer process, which is good, actually. It allows you to give back to an institute that would not have allowed the company to exist, and that's a good thing. So we finance not in a, well, we finance the research. It's not philanthropic. We don't finance it because it's good to finance research. At some point I would like to do so, but today we finance the research, but in return we get some results that we can integrate to our technology. And I think it's really something that was at the core of the company at the beginning. This link between engineering and research, and today it's still the case. And one thing that is interesting is that at the beginning I told you that we went and looked in on the lab if we could have some technology that we could aggregate and put on our device. Today it's funny, well, it's funny, it's more interesting because we are able to record thousands of nights per day distributed in lots of places with all the headband can have different parameters to run some large-scale and complex protocols, and we are able today to make the sleep research go forward. So at first we were integrating all the research, but today we are also pushing the boundaries of sleep science, well, in directions that are interesting for us, of course. But that's also very interesting about my job, with, of course, managing the technical team, but also trying to define what will be the next technical or the next research move that we could do, well, to be able to have a product that is in the end efficient to treat people.
And also, do you collect the data of your customers and use it to improve the product?
Yeah, so we collect data. So the deadband is connected to Wi-Fi. So we don't have any communication with a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi during the night. So everything is computed inside the headband. But when the person charges the headband when you wake up, the data is transferred on our server. We analyze this data, and we will personalize the parameters of the different features on the headband. And also every week or two, we push an update of the firmware to put new features on the device. And so the data that we gather allow us, as I said, to personalize the experience or to be more efficient on our users. And it also, of course, allows us to make some research and to be able to be more efficient. We are compliant with every standard for the analysis of data, which is actually important because we are dealing with kind of, it's health data, it's sensitive data, and so it's important to be rigorous on this standard. Well, also one thing we are doing that's very interesting is about 3,000 of our users agreed to be part of what we call the Adventurer program, which is a large-scale research program. And we often ask this user, do you want to be part of this protocol? It might be a new protocol for a new algorithm of deep sleep stimulation. And we can test on, let's say, 1,000 people. For 300 of them, algorithm A, 300 of them, algorithm B, 400 of them a placebo, and have each randomized on long time, and then see which one is more efficient, and so have very iterative research that allows us to be much more efficient than what a traditional sleep lab can do. The research that we can do in, let's say, 1 month, or even 2 weeks, a traditional lab would take, they have like 4 or 5 rooms for people to sleep in it, so it will take them years to be able to make the same thing. So yeah, so it's kind of interesting the way at first we integrated research and now we push research, and of course using the data that we generate and the large-scale research protocol to make it go forward. Thank you very much.